Hey, talk with that saw. Where we at? Where we at? Where is it? Where is it? Over there. Hey, copy 320.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Don't forget, if you like the content, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Amy's been on me. She said we got to get them likes up, Chad, so definitely asking everybody to hit that like button. If you haven't hit the like button already, go ahead and hit that thing. And make sure you leave a comment and share the video. Today's video is a video about, obviously from the thumbnail, you can see about a dude that I had met in prison. He was a military dude. He was a young kid when he was sent off to Iraq. He was a trained killer. He was a person that you would look at and say, this dude's not the type of dude that could do the things that he did. But he did them. He did them. And some people might think, well, how the hell was he in federal prison around you guys? Well, I'm going to tell you how he was in federal prison and how he was around us. And I'm going to tell you what ultimately happened with this kid, Steve Green. Ultimately, he decided that he didn't want to be transferred to another prison, a prison where he knew that he would be viciously and violently destroyed. So he did the unthinkable. And we'll get into that in a minute. But first, we're going to talk about how I had met him. He was in prison on one side, I was on the other. We had no contact, but we could talk through the fence. There was a certain class of people on one side that couldn't hang out with us. And one day I'm walking by and this white dude looks at me and he goes, "You guys think you're tough over there, huh?" And I chuckled. And honestly, man, the dude said, "You know what I think?" He said, "I think you're a bunch of pussies over there." And that got my attention. And I told him, "Yeah, well, you're a scumbag. That's why you're on that side." And for real, man, we kind of engaged in a little bit of a verbal disagreement, I guess you could say. And then the next day I seen the dude again, or maybe it was a couple days later. I just was like, "Yeah, whatever, dude. You know, we can't get to you. That's all." A couple days later, man, the same dude was walking by and he goes, "Hey, what's up, scumbag?" He's inside this yard. And I'm like, "What's up with this dude? Is this dude out of his mind?" And for, just a moment, and some people, in federal prison, people don't respect when people do this type of shit. But there's no way to get this dude. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I should spit right in his face. And I actually went, and he jumped back. And now you would think, like, how are these two dudes going to end up talking and, even conversating after this, right? I don't know. I don't know how it happened. I just know that it did happen. And I think there was a point where I was kind of like, "Yo, man, what are you over there for?" And he grabbed my attention when he talked about the government. He said, "Dude, I'm a soldier, bro." And I said, "Yeah, me too." But I thought he meant like a prison soldier. And I started thinking in my mind, he must have been a gang member, dropped out of his gang. Maybe that's why he's over there. But then we started to talk. And I started to learn about this dude. And I knew that he was a drug addict. And like I said before, man, I wasn't always a good dude, right? And on our side, we had things that they wanted on that side. And that's how our relationship really began. One day he was just talking shit because the dude was out of his mind. And as we talk about the story, you'll understand. You'll understand why this dude was out of his mind. So let's do that. On March 12, 2006, 5 soldiers from 1st Platoon Bravo Company, 1st Battalion. 502nd Infantry Regime of the 101st Airborne Division abandoned their post and headed to the village of Yusufia, located within their operational sector in Iraq. There, the 5 soldiers committed a brutal crime. They did something that I'm not going to talk about on here, but something that you can go back and check out. You can go back and check out exactly what they did, right? I can tell you that they went into this village and they massacred a whole family. A 14-year-old, Abir Qasim Hamza El Janabi, and the rest of her family. Her 34-year-old mother, her 45-year-old father, her 6-year-old sister. And she had 2 brothers, Muhammad and Ahmed. They were not home when this vicious crime happened. The family house where this atrocity occurred was situated approximately 200 meters, 220 yards from a 6-man U.S. traffic checkpoint, southwest of the village of Yusufia, which lies west of the larger township of El Muhammad, in a region of Iraq commonly referred to as the Triangle of Death by coalition forces. On the morning of the crime, Sergeant Paul Cortez, James Barker, Jesse Spielman, and Steve Green, the cat we're talking about, and Brian Howard, who served as the group lookout, gathered together and began to both discuss and plan the attack on the El Janabi family and in particular on Abir. The soldiers made detailed plans on how they were going to enter the house, sequester, and kill all but Abir, whom they would separate from the family. Fueled by alcohol confiscated from Iraqis, coupled with talk of revenge against the Iraqi people, the soldiers directed their frustrations towards the family, whom they rationalized were supporting their enemies, viewing them as scapegoats for the real and imagined suffering they were experiencing. The soldiers outlined their mission and made duty assignments, armed in disguise in order to appear inconspicuous while fully aware of what they were about to do. These soldiers abandoned their assigned TCP and headed to the El Janabi home. After cutting through a surrounding chain-link fence, the soldiers entered the home. Green and Spielman grabbed Hadil, the youngest daughter, and the family patriarch, Qasim, quickly moving them inside the home. Barker and Cortez cleared the house and detained Abir and her mother. After completing a final sweep, they segregated Abir from the rest of her family in another area of the house. At the time of this forced separation, Cortez and Barker began to do the unthinkable. I want you to go read it. Green tried forcing the rest of the family onto the floor. When they didn't follow his order, Green finished the whole family. He used his rifle and took their lives. Spielman, who was temporarily separated from the other soldiers, heard the sounds of gunfire and ran to the room to ensure that his fellow soldiers were safe. Spielman arrived at the scene and upon seeing the murdered family became angry at what Green had done. Each soldier, I don't want to talk about that part. Steve Green, Black Heart. There's a book about this called The Black Hearts, right? And that's what Steve had told me when he told me that he was a soldier. He said, man, order this book, man. He took a pen out of his pocket and he wrote it down and he handed it to me. He said, I want you to read this book. So I got the book. I read the book. And then, of course, my interests were piqued, right? And I started to talk to this cat. I started to see that he was absolutely crazy, absolutely nuts. This kid should have never been in the military. You know, there were times when he told people that he came to Iraq just to kill people. You know, I did a little research on old Steve, so I was prepared when we talked. Because I wanted to get inside the mind of this soldier who was a killer. Was he just a trained killer? Or was he touched upstairs? Was he touched mentally? I think he was touched mentally, man. And I asked him, I said, why would you do something like this, bro? There was no way to get to Steve. There was a fence separating us. He said, Chad, the stuff that you read in the book, some of the stuff that you read in some of these reports, said they're not all true. He said, do I feel horrible about what I did? I do, man. But not all of them are true. He said, they don't tell you the part about how, you know, these people were, and I make no excuses for what they did. What they did was absolutely horrible. He said, they don't tell you how these people were setting us up, how we were giving these kids stuff out of our MREs and dried peaches and stuff like that. And they were setting us up. They were telling on us, man, telling them where we were at. I watched my friends die, man. I watched my friends get shot in the head. And you know what? I exploded. I had enough. And I said, yeah, but there's reports that say that you said, man, you were in Iraq just because you wanted to kill people. He said, Chad, they took that statement out of context. He said, that's not how it was said, but that's what they portrayed in the media. He said, I want to kill these people because they were killing our people. Because they were killing my brothers, the people that I came here with. So in my mind, I said, man, I want to kill these people. I want to kill as many as I can. He said, and I'm fucked up, man. I'm real fucked up mentally. And that's why I'm using drugs. And at the prison we were at, they had these things called BBs. They were these little pills that they had from the military, from the days of the war. They were opiates. And all these dudes in this prison, not all of them, but a whole lot of them were on these opiates. They were getting high on these BBs, man. People were getting them for medical, because this was a medical facility. They were all messed up, sick. They would get their BBs and they would sell them. And I seen dudes, man, with $15,000, $20,000 on their account from selling their BBs to the dudes that want to get high. And Steve Green stayed high. Stayed high on the BBs, stayed high on the K2. Whatever he could do to run from his pain, to run from the things that he did, he just got high. That was his life. Every day, his life, he was getting high. And you know, when you get high, man, things happen. Things get happen. You start getting dirty urines. You start getting rode up. You start sending money to people. You know, his brother used to look out for him. His brother had sent money to people on numerous occasions. You know, so that he could get high. And that's how he did his time, getting high. But every time you get rode up, you go to the hole. And then finally the prison says, you know what? We're tired of you. We're tired of you, Steve Green. We know what you did. We don't like you anyway. And a lot of these cops that work in these prisons are former military dudes. Dudes that were in the military. Some of the dudes are probably looking down on him like, man, you're despicable. Some dudes probably don't give a shit. I'm going to read some more so we can get more into the case, more into the story. Upon discovery of the destroyed, and we're going to get back to Steve, El Janabi home and criminal evidence, local Iraqi contacted U.S. soldiers to request assistance with investigating the crimes. Since the incident took place in 1st Platoon sector, they were tasked by battalion leaders to investigate. Listen here, because you're about to hear about some of this shit. Sergeant Tony Yarab, a squad leader in the 1st Platoon, began the investigation and eventually hid the complicity of the U.S. soldiers in the crime. What they did was atrocious, disgusting, horrible. They did something that no one should ever do. And I don't care about nothing's fair in love and war. Well, you know what? Sometimes there's common decency. And I'll tell you what, man, there were times, man, where in my mind, I felt like I want to punch Steve Green's teeth down his throat. When I read the book and I talked to him, there were times where I'd like to really do something to this dude, man. And there's no way to do anything. But I felt that in my heart, like I wanted to hurt this dude, man. Like I was angry, man. No one should do anything, man. No one should ever do anything to hurt kids, man. Even Jesus talked about that in the Bible, right? He said no one should hurt these little ones. If you do, you'd be better off doing what? Tying a stone or millstone around your neck and jumping into the water over the cliff. Justin Watt, also in 1st Platoon, became aware of the crimes and reported them. Both soldiers discovered that their fellow soldiers had committed the crimes. But Sergeant Yarab and Watt took much different action to handle what they knew was morally wrong. Tony Yarab investigated the crime scene with several soldiers from 1st Platoon. When he dropped off Spielman and Cortez at TCP-2, Sergeant Yarab was met by Green, who feigned curiosity concerning all the commotion. Green asked Sergeant Yarab what was going on, and without any instigation by Yarab, he admitted to perpetrating the crime. Taken off guard by Green's initial statement, Yarab at first dismissed what he heard. He didn't want to hear it, man. He didn't want to believe it. Like, hell no, man. This was a dude that probably believed in the military, man. Believed in the cause. And he's got this dude that's supposed to be one of his fellow soldiers telling him about this stuff that he did that was, like I said, man, atrocious, man. As the investigation continued, the cover story began unraveling as Cortez, acting with Sergeant Yarab as one of the investigators of the crime scene, in which he himself had participated. He's investigating the crime scene that he was a part of. Began to experience vivid flashbacks of the event as he encountered the scene at the house post-incident. Cortez was so shaken by what he saw The dead girl reminding him of his own niece that he asked to be sent to combat stress. Oh, now you feel bad about what you did, huh, Cortez? Now you're regretting it. Europe soon began piecing together varied fragments of information he gained from hearsay. Direct evidence, finding a shotgun shell at the scene. Shotguns were rare in Iraq and normally used only by Americans. And personal encounters with participants in the crime. This enabled him to develop a basic understanding of what occurred and who was involved. Europe took Green aside and further questioned him. Green, with Barker nearby, remained silent, describing the crimes in great detail, but claimed he had committed them by himself. So Green tried to save the soldiers and said, man, they didn't have anything to do with it. I did it. Me and me alone. I did this horrible, horrible thing. Yarub stood up and told Green, I'm done with you. You are dead to me. You get yourself out of this army or I will get you out myself. And I remember Steve Green telling me about that. You know, some different type of words. He said the dude told him, man, fuck you, man. You're not part of my army. You're out of here. Now, Yarub finally and fully absorbed the implications of what he knew about the actions of Green and the others and the impact the crime would have on the unit. In spite of this knowledge and his personal awareness of the moral failure of the soldiers involved, Yarub willfully neglected to report what he knew about the incident, either out of misplaced loyalty or a desire to spare his soldiers and unit from disgrace. What do you think he was doing? He was hiding it, man. Maybe this dude was a real soldier. He didn't want people to know. Maybe he didn't want that to go to the media and, find out what some of the other people might want to do over there. I'm sure they wanted to attack when they found out, hey, this is what really happened. They want to attack, right? Retribution. We kind of talked about some of this stuff the other day, remember? Remember the Attica riots, the riot videos? You can only do so much to people before they break, man. Sometimes people break. And when they break, what happens? They lash out. They lash out. And certainly they did. On July 10th, the Mujahideen Shura Council, now a part of the Islamic State, released a graphic video showing the bodies of Privates Tucker and Menchenka. This video was accompanied by a statement saying that the group carried out the killings as revenge for our sister, who was dishonored by a soldier of the same brigade. The Washington Post reports that Charles Babineau and two other individuals from the same unit were captured and killed by militants a month after what happened. I say what happened because I don't want to say what they did, man. It's not appropriate probably for this channel. It's not appropriate. But you can definitely go on there and read about it, man. So Steve Green. Eventually Steve Green gets back and you're like, well, how the hell did he end up in federal prison? Green was arrested in North Carolina while traveling home from Arlington, Virginia, where he had attended the funeral of a soldier. On June 30th, 2006, the FBI arrested Green, who was held without bond and transferred to Louisville, Kentucky. Did I say that right? Louisville. Some people get mad if I call it Louisville. On July 3rd, federal prosecutors formally charged him with the disgusting act, murder of a beer, and with murdering her parents and younger sister. On July 10th, the U.S. Army charged 4 other active duty soldiers with the same crime. A 6th soldier, the man we were just talking about, Yarub, was charged with failing to report the attack, but not with having participated in the massacre. Green goes to federal court in July 2006. Says he's not guilty. He's already admitted this to the other people, but says, I'm not guilty. Opening arguments in Green's trial. Green admits all this stuff, that got it all wrote down, and he wants to go to trial. He says, I'm going to trial. I'm not going to plead guilty. I'm going to go to trial, and we're going to see what happens. Opening argument in Green's trial were heard on April 27, 2009. We're going to get to prison here in a minute. We're going to get to what Steve Green does in prison. The prosecution rested its case on May 4th. On May 7, 2009, Green was found guilty by the federal court in Kentucky of multiple counts of murder and the other atrocities that he committed. While the prosecutors sought the death penalty in this case, jurors failed to agree unanimously and the death sentence could not be imposed. They wanted to kill him. They wanted to take his life. On September 4th, Green was formally sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. American soldier goes into war, commits these atrocities. How old was he? He was 20 years old when he went to the army, man. 20 years old. What does he know about life? He's thrown over here to kill people. They train him to kill people. That Green was spared the death penalty provoked outrage from the family's relatives, with Abir's uncle describing the sentence as a crime almost worse than the soldier's crime. Green was held in the United States Penitentiary. And that's where he died. On February 15, 2014, I was in the hole at the same time as Steve. In fact, he lived 3 cells down from me. He would go to rec every day, and he'd be in a rec cage. He'd be walking around. Couldn't get high anymore. Really was no drugs back there at the time. And now Steve had to lay in his cell. He had to look at the ceiling. He had to get up in the morning. He had to look in the mirror. And he probably didn't like the person that was staring back at him, right? He didn't like the person that was staring back at him. But even more, he didn't like what was about to happen to him. The prison had finally had enough of Steve Green. The SIA, the Special Investigative Agent, hated him, disliked him. I said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Mr. Green, I'm going to put you on a bus. I'm going to transfer you. You're no longer going to be in this prison. You're no longer going to be a part of that side of the prison where they have this program where, you know, you're pretty much okay. You're safe. You're not going to get killed for what you've done. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you to a place where they're going to do to you what you've done to others. And in Steve's mind, I think he started to contemplate that. We've heard about the vicious violence, what it's like for people to be stabbed with bone crushers, for people to be destroyed behind that razor wire, to be stabbed, to be killed, to be choked. And Steve Green was contemplating that. He came to the rec yard and he talked to me about it. He said, damn, bro, they're about to send me to Victorville, man. What do you think? And I told him the simple truth. I said, it's not going to be easy, bro. I was kind of astonished that they were sending him to Victorville. He was hoping the whole time that he was going to go somewhere good. Then he found out where he was designated. That's something that happens in prison. You know, they're not supposed to tell you where you're going. You know, usually the lieutenant will come by cell to cell and say, once a week, you're designated. Nope, you're not designated. Some dudes are sitting down there 3, 4 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year. And you're just praying that you get designated so you can get out of the hole. So you can at least be a little bit normal. Someone came down that range, probably the lieutenant, and told Steve Green, hey, man, you're designated. And probably showed him the paper and said, this is where you're heading, man. And then that's when shit got real for him. Shit got real. Steve Green's life had just became real. It was time to pay the price, and he knew it. And that's what scared him. He was finally scared. He finally knew that he was in danger. He was in danger of being a victim of violence. He was in danger of becoming what he had made other people, a victim. But I also know that there were things going on in Steve's mind. Because like I told you, for some reason, I kept talking to this dude through the gate. I kept walking the yard. We'd walk back and forth, straight line, back and forth. I was curious, man. I'm a curious type of person. You know, in prison I read a lot of military books, a lot of stuff about the Vietnam War. You know, a lot of stuff about Germany and, you know, Dr. Death. These were things that I was interested in. And I was interested in finding out, not a psychologist or anything like that, but I was interested in finding out about Steve Green, what was going on in his mind. And I learned more and more. I learned that, you know, he was a young man that went to prison, that went to the Army at 20 years old. You know, he was fascinated by the Army. He wanted to be a tough guy. Or at least he thought that in his young mind at 20 years old. And then they sent him off. They sent him off to a war. A war where, in my personal opinion, 20-year-old kid, he's a kid, man. He wasn't ready for what he was about to see. He wasn't ready to see people shot in the head. He wasn't ready to see people killed. He wasn't ready for that shit. But he was there. And I think it mentally destroyed him. I think it scared him. I think he was just a scared kid from Texas, thinking he was a tough guy. But when the world got tough, he wasn't a tough guy no more. Sometimes we deal with people like that all the time in life. I used to say that about people in prison. This dude wants to be a tough guy, man. Be an all the time tough guy. I've seen dudes do fucked up shit to people in prison. Then when something gets done to them, I've seen these same dudes, man, get slapped. I've seen dudes slap a dude, and then I've seen them get slapped and not fight back. And I'm like, wow, that's all the tough guy shit out the window, huh? That's what happened to Steve Green, man. All the tough guy shit was out the window. And this is the craziest shit. One of the craziest things that I've seen in prison. You know, I don't want to skip past the part where I got to know Steve, man. I got to talk to him. And I knew he was lost, man. He was lost. He was mentally destroyed. He was battling a demon. And the only way that he could fight the demon was through drug addiction in prison. And his brother was spending a lot of money. His brother was sending all the money into the prison to take care of him. Money to this guy, money to that guy, money to this guy's family so that Steve could numb the pain. And I think his brother felt bad for him. I think his brother had a heart of compassion. So anyway, Steve comes to the rec yard all the time. This morning, I walk by his cell, and he's in there. He's at the window looking out, staring at us, walking by. What's up, man? You ain't coming out? Nah, man, not today. And we go to rec. And for some reason, on this day, me and my cellie are coming back, handcuffed behind our back. We're the first people to come back. I think they put us in the first cage, or the last cage. And we're the first people to come back after our hour and a half rec. We walk by Steve's cell. And we look in there. You know, walking back. What's up, man? Not supposed to look in people's cells. And there he was, man. He had hung himself. Steve Green had took his life. Took his life. I don't think he died immediately. I remember them saying he was in the hospital for like a day or two or 3 days, and that was it. He checked out. Steve Green checked out. It was over with, man. His life was over with. A young life stamped out. A young life stamped out because he took other people's lives, because he went into a war that he wasn't ready for, man. And I believe that shit just mentally destroyed him. And I say that from personal experience of talking to this cat. Talked to this cat probably for 8-9 months. Got to know him. Did I like him? I didn't like the shit that he did. I despised it. And there were days when I felt like I wanted to punch his teeth out. And then there were other days when I would listen to his story and be like, wow, man. And sometimes you want to have some compassion when you start to understand the story. You don't respect what he did. You don't forgive what he did. You don't look past what he did. But you want to have a little bit of compassion because you start to understand what he went through. You know, there's a lot of people in prison that go through all kinds of different things. And sometimes they do exactly what Steve did. Some guys do it with drugs. Some guys hang themselves. Some people, you know, cut their wrist. I've seen a lot of crazy shit in there. Sometimes prison becomes so overwhelming that you can't handle it. And you give up, man. That's where you break. You know, I want to tell you a little bit more about the co-defendants, and then I want to get into the moral of the story. James P. Barker. November 15th, he pleads guilty to what they did, plus the murder, requiring him to give evidence against the other soldiers to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 90 years in prison and must serve 20 years before being considered for parole. So after 20 years, he'll be considered for parole. He was dishonorably discharged. He wept during closing statements and accepted responsibility for what he did, saying the violence he had encountered in Iraq left him angry and mean toward Iraqis. Journalists reported he smoked a cigarette outside as a bailiff watched over him. He grinned but said nothing as reporters passed by. He is currently held in the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. We're going to do another video about Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, another soldier that I was with that hit a dude in the head with a baseball bat. Killed 2 people in prison. We're going to talk about him too at some point. On January 22nd, 2007, Cortez also pleaded guilty to the same crimes and was sentenced to 100 years in prison, followed by a dishonorable discharge. He too wept and apologized for the crimes, saying he cannot explain why he took part. On August 3rd, 2007, Mr. Spielman, 23 years old, was sentenced by a court-martial to 110 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years, followed by a dishonorable discharge. He was convicted of the same crimes, housebreaking also. Brian L. Howard, He was an accessory after the fact. The court found that his involvement included hearing the others discussing the crime and lying to protect him, but not commission of the actual crimes. He served a 27-month sentence and was dishonorably discharged. His career out the window. Uri was initially charged with obstructing the investigation and dereliction of duty in a false statement. In exchange for his testimony against the other men, the government dropped the charges against Uri, and he accepted an administrative discharge characterized as other than honorable. Lost his career because he didn't want to embarrass the army. He probably hates that dude, huh? Probably hated Steve Green. This guy was a military guy, man. This was his career. This is what he was going to do, man. Justin Watt, the whistleblower, received a medical discharge and is now running a computer business. He said that he received death threats after coming forward. However, in 2010, he was asked by the U.S. Army Center for the Army Profession and Ethic at West Point, New York, to be interviewed and speak before Army profession audiences about his decision to report the crimes in accordance with his moral obligation to uphold the Army ethic. Watt and Sergeant Deem have both done so, including venues at which hundreds of senior Army leaders were present, for which their acts were giving standing ovations. That's the story of Steve Green, man. Story of Steve Green. What's the moral of the story? Look, man, if you're out here doing things that are putting you in a position to end up in prison, and not just about Steve Green, but about what could happen when you get there, man. How lonely and depressed you can become. How you can get to the point where you say, man, I don't want to live no more. That's what prison will do to you. Start thinking about the shit that you're doing. But when you think about the things that you're doing, think about the consequences. Think about what comes with it. Think about the fact that you could be locked in a cell 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. Think about that. That could happen. Actually, you might be in a cell 23 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then the other 2 days is 24 hours a day. Saturday and Sunday, you get no rec. You sit in your cell. You're locked in a cell. Let me tell you something about being locked in a cell, man. You know, you can sit in your cell all day when the door's unlocked, when you have the ability to leave whenever you want. You can walk out in the day room, go heat something up in the microwave, go watch a little TV, and it doesn't bother you. But the moment the police lock that door, the moment you hear them keys clink, and you don't have the ability to make your own choice to walk out, it starts to bother you. You start to be like, damn, man. The cell starts getting you jittery. You start wanting to get out. You start wanting to escape. And you can't. If you get hungry, you can't go out and get nothing to eat. If you want to call your family because you're feeling down, you can't. Just got to think about the things that you do, man. I hope this video hit a chord, man. I hope it touches something upstairs. I hope it makes you say, man, I don't want to be in that position. Man, hope it makes you think, man, before you do something fucked up. Yeah, we'll use the word fucked up. Before you fuck your whole life off, think about it, man. Steve Green and these dudes went into this town. They planned it, man. They planned it. They had to know that there was going to be consequences, man. You know, whenever you do something wrong, you ever get scared? You feel it? Like, damn, I probably shouldn't do this shit. And you do it anyway? When you get that feeling like, man, I probably shouldn't do this, that's the moment you got to wake up. That's the moment you got to look in the mirror. That's the moment you got to reflect on your life. That's the moment when, like I talked about that dude said, man, he has 2 sets of boots by his door, his prison boots and his work boots. In that moment, that's the time when you got to decide what boots you're going to put on. All journeys in life, for good or bad, begin with one small step. When we take the step, we choose our path. We choose our destiny. Our destination is chosen by us. You're the writer of your own story. You're the driver of your car. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. With respect, until tomorrow, we're out.